All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Elita Sergeyeva. I am from Energy Cities, and today you are joining the Shape EU Training Day. We have a series of events like this happening aimed to share knowledge on district level renovations, especially social and affordable housing renovations. If this is your first Shape EU event, don't worry, I will do a little introduction later and tell you more about it. Just before we start, I wanted to mention two things. So the webinar will be recorded. The replay will be available on Shape EU YouTube channel. And for communication, feel free to raise your hand, to use the chat, ask any questions you have, and we will try to find an answer or discuss about it. So, but for what do we have on the agenda today? So, as I said, these events are aimed at sharing the knowledge on renovation of affordable and social housing districts, and each event has a certain topic. And today our topic is people at the center of district level renovations, and you will be hearing from many speakers today. So I will begin with, sorry, I have to let some people in. Okay. Okay, I will begin with a short introduction on what is Shape EU and a short recap on a study we did in Shape EU on local stakeholder barriers and needs when it comes to renovating social housing at district scale. We interviewed quite a few people, we heard some interesting points, and today I will just highlight a few that are relevant for today's topic. Then we will move on, and Saskia, who has done an extensive research on resident participation, she will share some findings and recommendations with us. I think that will be a very interesting presentation. And moving on, we will have two speakers talking about their experience renovating at district scale and at building scale. We will start with San Jose neighborhood renovation in Lada, Langreo, presenter Daniel, and then we will move on and hear more about what's happening and what is the progress in Fingal County Council. Then we will finally have a presentation from the University of TU Delft. Quenna will talk more about the tenant scale, so the people scale, and how to focus and change the occupants' energy behavior when it comes to renovations. After that, we will have a Q&A and a discussion, either in one room or in breakout rooms. We will see how many people we have in the meeting. And a panel discussion. We have prepared two questions for our speakers, but feel free to jump in at any moment. And last but not least, we will finish this webinar with a sort of recap of what's happening in Shape EU next, what are the upcoming events, and how can you benefit from those? So, what is Shape EU? For those who do not know, Shape EU stands for European Affordable Housing Consortium. We are 10 dedicated partners coordinated by Housing Europe and co-funded by the European Union Single Market Program. And basically, our two objectives are to ensure that the renovation wave and the new European Bauhaus are socially inclusive and affordable, and that the renovations we so desperately need are not happening at the expense of the vulnerable members of the society. And we want to do this by supporting affordable and social housing providers, public authorities, SMEs, in delivering lighthouse exemplary renovation districts that include innovative features. And when we talk about innovative features, we talk about social innovation, technical innovation, and project implementation, innovating the project implementation process. So more specifically, what we do is we serve as a one-stop shop for local leaders. So if you are a person working with district level renovations in your local context, feel free to reach out to us if you need any support, guidance, an example from an existing district, anything, we can help you. We are also, in the meantime, we are running a peer-to-peer mentorship program where we have coupled together people who have already done successful district renovation projects with people who are working on them now, and in this way they can support each other. In the meantime, we're also working on guidelines, or we call them the blueprints, on how to scale up renovation efforts and how to plan and implement innovative renovations. Till the end of the year, they should be finished, and you will be able to get these documents and get these guidelines, and in 3 specific topics: so social innovation, technical innovation, and project implementation. We are also working on a series of online and real-life events, one of which you're attending now. We have study visits, we have a boot camp coming up, but we will tell you more about it at the end of this event. And of course, we're also working on policy recommendations on the EU level to make sure that the voices and the needs of the local level are heard on the EU stage. So just a little bit of setting the stage. So European Consortium, we did a report on, we tried to identify what are the needs and barriers on the local level from the local stakeholders working with renovations. We did 30+ interviews. We interviewed local authorities, social housing providers, SMEs working with renovations, also financiers. And the main question we asked them, what are your bottlenecks? What are the biggest struggles for you? And here I just, in one slide, I summarized the ones that are related to today's topic, which is people at the center of renovations, so the social aspects. And we have a few cases. So in the first case, in the first case, when buildings are owned by, sorry, I have to check the chat. Can anyone hear me still?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay, so I guess it's just Saskia, sorry.
Okay. No, you came back, but did it go out for everyone or just me?
I never, yeah, I could hear you all the time.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, don't worry. Let me just go back. So about so what I was saying about the local stakeholder challenges. So in a case when the buildings are owned by the public authority or a social housing organization, there are 2 biggest or main reoccurring challenges mentioned by the stakeholders. And one of them is the way how they have underestimated the time and resources needed for communicating with the tenants. So even if we all know that you have to do it, in many cases, simply the local authorities, the city council, they do not have the resources to do that. And another point is the lack of co-design process. Also, in many cases, the social housing providers, they do informative events with the tenants, yet the co-design process is something different. It's more integrated, and in a lot of cases, they simply don't have the knowledge or the expertise to do that. This also links to then tenants not knowing how to use their new renovated building and not being able to achieve the energy efficiency level that has kind of been promoted before the project. The other case is in a case when the building is privately owned by multi-owner owners. So let's say it's a 20 apartment building, and all of them are owned by different people. The difficult decision process is the biggest challenge, because they all have to come together and reach an agreement to invest in their building. And that is very difficult. And there's also a lack of funding schemes, because even the existing ones, they just support a small percentage of the buildings that need renovation. And of course, another issue is the split incentives, when the owners are actually not living in their own properties, so they're renting them out, so they don't have a huge motivation to renovate it because they wouldn't be benefiting from them. Another case that people talked a lot about was what happens after renovation. And here, one of the major issues mentioned was the lack of regulation for rent increases. So yes, we get to the point when we invest money in the buildings and the building is now energy efficient, yet the building is now a better building, which costs more, which leads to rent increases, which then leads to it can lead to residential segregation because the previous tenants can no longer afford to live in these buildings. So those were a few issues that we have kind of highlighted, and maybe hopefully today in the presentations we will hear ways how to overcome them or even solve them. So for the next speaker, I would like to ask Saskia to share her own presentation, and the floor is yours. Let me just stop my slides.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So good morning. As Eleanor mentioned, my name is Saskia Furman. I'm an architect with experience in the commercial residential sector. But after that, I actually left to work in low carbon retrofit of existing homes for single households. Now, I'm a PhD candidate and part of the Reedwell Consortium, a Marie Curie ITN researching sustainable and affordable housing. My overall PhD project investigates how best to upgrade existing European social housing through targeted renovations or retrofit. I've spent 6 months on secondment at 2 institutions, Incasol, the Catalan Land Institute in Barcelona, where I'm actually based, and Housing Europe, which is how I came to be here. So I'm going to take you through an introduction into participatory social housing retrofit, the aim of my investigation, the methodology that I used, the results, which are the articles and case studies that I found, key findings, recommendations organized under key project stages, and a quick summary. So what's the scope of the problem? Well, typically, retrofit centers around 3 main technical improvements: enhancing the building fabric's thermal properties through insulation, airtightness, and draft proofing, improving systems efficiency, and integrating renewable energy sources. But performance gaps can actually be as high as 5 times the predicted energy consumption. And this is for reasons including rebound effect, pre-bound effect, occupant behavior, improper installation, and simulation uncertainties. Research also shows that non-energy benefits are actually more important to residents than energy-related benefits, particularly social housing residents who require really different solutions from homeowners. So by integrating residents' perspectives in retrofit design alongside expert input, it can help achieve holistic sustainable outcomes, social, environmental, and economic, by increasing energy performance, affordability, health and well-being, quality of life, and user empowerment. I wanted to determine good practices in order to subsequently advise stakeholders and practitioners. And so I set out with these 2 aims: to comprehensively review existing research on resident participation in social housing retrofit, and to examine how greater resident participation could lead to better holistic sustainability outcomes. I performed what's called a semi-systematic literature review. So in brief, starting with these 5 academic databases on the left, I searched for the 5 keywords on screen and synonyms, giving me approximately 800 articles. Now, obviously, I can't read 800 articles and analyze them alone, so I started narrowing down my results. I electronically searched within the abstract title and keywords of each article for the most important terms. I chose English and Spanish language only, cases based in European countries, and nothing written before 2002, because that's when the first EPBD was released to promote raising energy performance in existing buildings. And this drastically cut my results to 58. I then read the titles and abstracts of the 58 articles with 3 exclusion criteria in mind. I removed any duplicate articles, articles without resident participation, and where the retrofit process wasn't the main focus of the article. This gave me 12 articles to read in full, and then I repeated the exclusion criteria, leaving me with 9 academic articles. So the results I'm about to present come from 2 theoretical papers where the case studies haven't been realized, and 7 practically implemented articles describing the technical and social retrofit processes. These are the resulting 9 articles. The slightly shaded 2 are the theoretical papers, and the others draw results from the realised case studies. The most in-depth examples of finished deep retrofit projects with participation come from Van Hoof, this one in the middle, and it's a Netherlands care home project by the Habion Housing Association, as well as Gianfrate, who are below. And they make use of really good passive heating strategies by adding winter gardens and passive cooling strategies by using Trombe micro walls. So the point of the review wasn't to go into all of these, but here's a list of the case studies that came up from the literature, the ones that weren't anonymized anyway, which most of them were actually. So from analysing the results, the key findings can be grouped into 3 major considerations within social housing retrofit and participation. The motivations of building owners to retrofit, the kind of external context, and these include the green transition, which is legislated in Europe, human-centered reasons, such as a commitment by the housing associations to resident well-being and increasing sustainability. The second consideration is the retrofit process itself, exploring the methods used to make decisions, the role of the stakeholders, and the physical infrastructure, the actual upgrades. And then finally, person-centered impact examines the impact retrofit has on its stakeholders. And this includes themes of social inclusion, how and when feedback is integrated, and safeguarding future residents. I then compared how each of these studies approached these themes, always considering the level of decision-making power given to the residents or not, as the case may be. So the conclusions and recommendations from this analysis are grouped by 4 key retrofit stages: before retrofit begins, during the retrofit design, during retrofit construction, and after retrofit completion. For the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus on these peach-coloured items for more details. And here, that's how to ensure user-centered approaches before retrofit begins. So treat social sustainability as importantly as environmental upgrades. Legislate for social value in retrofit to increase social sustainability. Make allocating time to integrate resident feedback at the beginning of a project a mandatory condition of subsidies. To successfully change user habits and behavior, take a user-centered design approach. I can elaborate on all of this later if you'd like. Information campaigns and workshops might not have the desired attendance. Residents are often from marginalized groups and already distrust housing companies. They also lack ownership over their own homes. So increasing resident decision-making power could increase their willingness to engage. Always consider social inclusivity, language barriers, equality, diversity, and inclusion, and representation within all stakeholders, including the people who are telling residents about the project. During retrofit design, how to collect information from residents, hold meetings at various times of the day, obtain residents' needs and wishes through workshops alongside inclusive, non-technical written exercises in multiple languages. These can also be placed in common areas and individual post boxes. Access as many residents as possible. Engaging with residents at the beginning of the project through various channels of communication and workshops can ultimately reduce delays, reduce costs, increase project awareness, understanding, and proper use, ultimately leading to better sustainability outcomes. Integrating resident feedback into the design. A feedback loop should be integrated, where stakeholders can give opinions on the retrofit design at various stages. And this kind of brings the residents along with the journey, offers opportunities to educate and lead to compromise, and can build trust between residents and housing companies. Demonstration dwellings are great, but they're mostly advantageous when they're used early to integrate suggestions and evolve as a participation tool. So recommendations during retrofit construction. We all know we need more skilled labour, not just technically, but also people skills required by contractors working in occupied homes, which is very different from new build. Stakeholder communication. Embed good communication for queries and discussion right at the start of a project to have honest and regular updates throughout construction, even if things are going wrong. This will promote good stakeholder relationships, manage expectations, communicate changes, reduce time to fix problems after completion, and increase that really important trust between residents and housing companies. Include on-site reference points where residents can approach contractors during retrofit. and use demonstration dwellings dynamically to illustrate construction changes. So finally, recommendations after retrofit completion, preparing the residents. Energy agents from within the existing group of residents can help reduce misuse of technology, and it also gives them a social role, a new social role within a forging community. This leaves contractors only needing to respond to the most challenging technical issues. Where social mixing occurs, continually aid in this transition through activities and/or events to promote a social role of the housing association. In summary, increasing resident decision-making power can lead to more holistic sustainability outcomes. Inclusive retrofit design, thinking about equality, diversity, and inclusion, will lead to improved residents' energy use and empowerment, improve the way they interact with energy-saving technology, leading to habitual change and other good energy practices. This will close the performance gap while also improving well-being and bolstering social sustainability. So if you'd like any more information from me, here's my details on board and the project of affordable and sustainable housing. That's the Marie Curie Readwell project. So thank you. We'll stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think we have a good basis on the discussion that's going to follow. Daniel, the floor is yours now. Yes. And I'm excited to see which of these aspects did you get to implement in your project. Do you want me to share your slides, or is it better?
I can share it.
Okay, maybe it's easier. Great, thank you.
Okay, can you see it? My presentation? Yeah.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. Okay. No, I have some problems. I ask you to share your screen, please.
I mean, we can see it now, but okay. Do you want me to start with the video or the presentation?
With the video. I want to start the I don't know. Okay.
Let me try.
Yeah, please.
Let's see. I have your video here.
Yeah, I want to start with the video.
Okay.
To show you the opinions of the tenants about the project and the renovation project. Okay.
Okay, that's no problem. Can you hear the sound? Let me just click this.
Yeah.
Is the sound coming through?
Yes, it is.
Yes, I didn't hear that.
Yes.
Okay, let's watch the video then.
Estamos en el barrio de San José de Lada, un barrio que surge alrededor de los años 60 con todo el movimiento de industrialización y minería que se genera en la zona, y el perfil de la población de aquí es una población de aproximadamente 60 años y una población principalmente obrera.
Yo vivo aquí, como bien te dije, 67 años, en el mismo portal y en el mismo piso.
El proyecto se inicia pues, con un diálogo entre el Ayuntamiento de Langreo, los vecinos y la Consejería, principalmente la Dirección General de Vivienda y Vipasa, que es la gestora de las viviendas del Principado.
Lo primero que hizo Vipasa ya antes del proyecto de rehabilitación fue un proceso de monitorización del comportamiento energético de esas viviendas. Y lo que quisimos hacer es ver cómo se comportaban energéticamente, y de ahí extrajimos una serie de conclusiones que fueron muy útiles para orientar posteriormente el proyecto de rehabilitación integral de esas viviendas.
El proyecto ha sido financiado en una parte por el Instituto de la Transición Justa del Estado español y el resto por el Principado de Asturias. Se ha actuado en 3 líneas. Una es la envolvente del edificio, ahí se actúa en todo lo que es la fachada más las ventanas, se han cambiado todas las ventanas, y la cubierta del edificio. Después se ha puesto un sistema de agua caliente sanitaria comunitario para todas las viviendas y un sistema de ventilación con recuperación de calor. Lo que hace es ventilar continuamente las viviendas, consiguiendo aire limpio y sano continuo, pero es muy eficiente porque mantiene la temperatura que haya en la vivienda. Y después se actuó en la accesibilidad de las plantas bajas, consiguiendo que todas las viviendas de plantas bajas puedan tener un acceso accesible. Si algo caracteriza al proyecto del ADA es precisamente un modelo de gobernanza con alma, en el que han participado los vecinos y vecinas de las propias viviendas, las administraciones públicas en sus diferentes ámbitos, el ayuntamiento, la consejería y también las empresas que han ejecutado las obras.
Nadie les obligaba a que nosotros participáramos en ello. Oye, te dicen va a ser así y punto, pero te dieron la oportunidad de manifestar tu opinión.
Valoro la información muy positivamente, tanto en las reuniones como si teníamos un problema íbamos a hablar con el jefe de obra.
50 reuniones con Vipasa explicando cómo iba a ser.
Las mejoras respecto al confort en la vivienda, extraordinarias. Pasamos de tener unas viviendas que tenían una humedad que era imposible, las paredes con mohos, ácaros, de todo, a no tener nada ahora de humedad.
Probablemente los problemas de alergia que yo tengo son a raíz de tanta humedad. Y ahora el pitido por la noche no existe, del asma.
El sistema de ventilación se nota mucho porque noto mucho la falta de olores, los ruidos. Yo vivo en un primero, no es que tuviera muchos ruidos, pero también se nota mucho lo acústico.
Que tú tienes una temperatura constante, gastando mucho menos, que es muy importante.
Que aquí se habla de 1.200 euros al año de ahorro.
El ahorro es muy importante. En una familia obrera, el euro a euro, todo cuenta.
A pesar de una obra de esta envergadura y de estas características, la renta de los inquilinos no se ha incrementado, puesto que en Asturias la vivienda pública, la vivienda social, está estipulado que nadie paga más del 20% de sus ingresos, con lo cual la renta de los inquilinos sigue siendo la misma que antes del proyecto de rehabilitación.
Un éxito que medimos sobre todo en clave de orgullo de barrio. Yo creo que es importante el ver cómo ese proceso de transformación de un barrio de 258 viviendas ha facilitado, ¿no?, que cada vecino y cada vecina se sienta orgulloso de su barrio, y para el Gobierno de Asturias, sin duda, pues este proyecto de ADA es un orgullo.
Yo creo que los ladenses estamos muy orgullosos.
Bueno, está claro que hay un antes y un después. Antes había una barriada pues gris, una barriada triste. Ahora hay luz, hay color. Entras en la rotonda, lo primero que ves es este edificio que es una referencia para todo Lada, que ilumina a todo Lada y además, bueno, que lo ponemos de ejemplo en todo Langreo, en Asturias y en Europa.
Hemos sacado una lección de este proyecto de ADA. Una lección que es importante para el Gobierno de Asturias, porque lo es para los vecinos y vecinas que viven en estas viviendas, y el ver cómo realmente las políticas que ponemos en marcha tienen impacto en la vida de las personas.
Y ahora estoy encantado.
El barrio este es un lujo.
Yo estoy súper contenta.
El confort de la vivienda, sí.
Me siento feliz.
Pues muy contento, la verdad. Claro, de que ahora ya puedo estar a gusto dentro de mi casa, ¿no?
Okay, so we can continue with the presentation. Elena, thank you. Okay, so this is the neighborhood. Is located in Langreo, in Asturias. It's one of the oldest public housing neighborhoods in Asturias. It was built by the state around the 60s to provide housing for the workers of the thermal power plant. Currently, most of the tenants are over 60 years old and are retired. We have 258 dwellings, as you could see on the video, with 2, 3, or 4 bedrooms per dwelling. there were many deficiencies in the buildings, walls with high levels of humidity, damaged windows, coal and gas heating systems functioning simultaneously. And in 2018, we started a monitoring project, taking measures from the temperature, humidity, CO2 levels, wind, rain, and sunlight. We start with this monitoring system to see which were the problems there. At that moment, there was the possibility to get grants in the framework of the decarbonization programs to do the renovation. An urgent project was developed in order to meet the deadlines. During this phase, collaboration with the tenants was not possible due to the urgency to meet these deadlines. Okay, so next, please. This is the floor of the neighborhood. Some blocks of some building blocks. Next, please. So what we wanted there was to improve the quality of life for tenants, reduce energy costs to combat energy poverty, improve comfort in homes by reducing the CO2 levels, improve health conditions in dwellings by eliminating existing interior humidity. Okay, so next, the actions they take there was to apply an external insulation system on the facade and on the roof, installation of new PVC windows. In this case, we had a conflict with some neighbors who have recently replaced their windows by themselves. The compromise after the meetings was to accept a double window setup, installing the new one on the outside. Next, please. These are some photos from the refurbishment process. Next, we install also a community hot water system using aerothermal technology for its building block. And next, please, and a mechanical control ventilation with a heat recovery system to improve indoor air quality. Next, please. Also, the accessibility on the ground floor. We install these ramps on the dwellings on the ground floor, and windows facing the courtyard, the inner courtyard, were modified in case an elevator installation becomes possible in the future. At that moment, it wasn't possible, but the money. But maybe for the future, we can install. So we modified some windows on the courtyard for this reason. Also, next, please. No, next. We had some. This is a photo from the first meeting. Due to the deadlines of the grant, the project could initially involve active participation, but later more than 50 meetings were held with the tenants. During these meetings, the process was explained and modifications were made to the initial plan before and during the retention and during the process of the construction. Changes proposed by the tenants were implemented, such as adding dryers on the first and second floors, modified the model of the ground floor doors to enhance security, and allowing the rotation of existing windows, as I mentioned before, while adding a second external window for insulation. After this, stay there. After this initial meeting opened to all the tenants that sometimes go out from the topic of the refurbishment project, it was decided to modify the meetings. Representative people were designated from each building block to attend the meetings, and the agenda for each meeting was clearly predefined. For the acceptance of the work, tenants were also involved on a verification checklist for to have the opportunity to express their approval or disapproval of the work done. And tenants were informed also about their energy consumption and its impact on the daily life. And they were training on specific measures for using the new dwellings. We also create a demo model apartment to assess the results prior to the full execution of the project. They had the opportunity to see how were going to be their new dwellings. Okay, so next, please. Next. So actually, we are still there working on the neighborhood from a social perspective. We have different programs. This one in collaboration with the Red Cross, a telecare system for 150 homes. Also a program for tenant training, for example, about healthcare. Next, please. We are working also on the stability for families living there in the neighborhood by an instruction from the Department of Social Rights. The instructions expand the possibility of surrogations permitted by the law, enabling family members with any degree of relationship to the deceased to assume tenancy if they prove that they have been living there in the last 2 years. Next. And housing changes for elderly people or those with accessibility issues residing on upper floors. If they have any problem, any mobility problem, they have the possibility to change the dwelling for a fully accessible ground floor unit. Next. Next. The construction, the construction of the housing units has been successfully reduced to achieve optimal comfort levels with savings up to the 50%, promotion of neighbor participation through the process, combination of sustainability and inclusions. These are some of the results. Improving tenants' ecological awareness and fighting against the energy poverty, increase the sense of belonging to the neighborhood. This is an important part. And this is a fully replicable model. Legally constituted communities were created there after the renovation work. And this, I think, is the most important part. They have a sense of community and ownership. So next, please. What we learned there about the renovation process, the importance of the tenant participation on the process, appointment of representatives per buildings, block or floor, and clear agendas defined before the meetings. This is important to know out from the topic of the meetings. Pilot model apartment to engage the tenants before the refurbishment to see how it's going to be their new dwellings. Creation of communities primarily by building blocks as they share certain elements like drying areas, antennas, etc. We have to create communities by block. And we still maintain the rents. They not pay more than 20% of the income. So after the refurbishment process. So this finished. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. All right, I didn't get it from the video, but maybe I just missed it. Did the tenants have to leave their housing? Did they have to relocate?
No. It's a huge neighborhood. It wasn't possible to move them. So the more difficult works were from the facade and the roof, so it wasn't a problem to get them inside the dwellings.
All right. I have a few more questions, but I will leave it for the Q&A that follows later. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Let's move on to Ayofe. Are you here with us? Do you wish me to share your slides, or do you wish to share them?
I'll try and share it myself, will I, Elena?
Okay.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Aoife Lawler. I work for Fingal County Council. So we work in the housing section, and we were tasked by the government to renovate our housing stock as part of the National Climate Action Plan. So Fingal is in Ireland. It's the Greater Dublin area is divided up into 4 local authorities. So we're the northern 4. Are the northern one of the 4 of us. We've quite a large budget. We're the 3rd largest local authority in the country, but we would also be quite innovative. So we would often be the ones trying new things. So this is one of the ones that has been a success for us. So we manage 6,500 homes for social housing tenants, and we're moving into affordable and into cost rental models. We have our own construction schemes. We restore older houses. And these are examples of some of the projects we have on the go at the moment. The National Retrofit Programme fell out of the Climate Action Plan. And as part of this, the government has tasked that 36,500 social homes belonging to the state should be retrofitted under the national plan. They have set very strict guidelines for that and very tight funding. So we have to work within those criteria when we go out and speak to our tenants, which is a very important part of what Saskia was talking about earlier. So we have a 10-year energy efficiency retrofit programme from 2021 to 2023. We're going to target 10% of our stock, the older stock rather than the stock built after 2016. And the intention is to bring all of it to B2 standard. Now, we don't have very many apartments, so we're actually dealing with individual homes with tenants. And like our previous speaker, the income is limited to 12% of the household income. And we weren't in a position to move people out of the homes, so the work had to be done with the tenants in situ. And as you can see, there's quite a geographical spread. And to satisfy our political representatives, every year we do a spread throughout the county. And so that we meet all of their needs. We also include any houses where a tenant has handed in their notice, and we're doing relet works to get it ready to be relet again. So you can see we have gradually increased it from 91 in 2021 to hopefully close to 150 in 2023 and further. We've also done a new pilot project, because while we're doing this with our stock, there was a government agency called Sustainable Energy Agency Ireland also doing the work on private stock and encouraging non-social tenants to get the work done. So we were in an estate that was previously all council, but more than 50% of the houses have been bought out by the tenants. So they were now the owners. They didn't qualify for this scheme, but we had contractors on site. So we partnered with the SEAI and with their Energy Cloud pilot program, and we went to both the social tenants and they went to the private tenants, and then the one contractor is going to do the work on the estate. We've had a row of 6, which are 3 social and 3 private, sign up through open nights and group events similar to what was talked about in previous presentations. And we have got a number of people on board, and the first 6 are about to commence, that are a mix of social and private. So the type of the works that we would include will be, you know, the attic insulation, external wall insulation, which was really important. If we put cladding on the outside, you'll see in some later photographs, it really gave an uplift to the whole estate and to the homes. We did the windows and doors, the heat pumps, the heating controls, and some of the other ancillary works that are required. A lot of our houses, the plumbing in it or the wiring in it was too old for the modern appliances. So we had to go back in and literally rewire houses, replumb houses. And that's a huge, you know, inconvenience to many of our tenants. And it goes on for a number of weeks. You know, we move into an estate and it would be in and out within 12 weeks. But for that 12 weeks, many of our tenants are inconvenienced. You know what a construction site is like. We try to minimize it, but it is hard. And many of our tenants and we targeted those that are more vulnerable and older to reduce their heating bills, you know, targeted people who are in fuel poverty. But as a result, we were targeting people who were older, who had a disability, and for whom this was even more of an inconvenience. It was very hard for them to deal with. So a key part of what we were doing really is the communication. We were out talking to tenants. We were sitting around having a cup of tea at the kitchen table. We were at every stage, we were at the end of a phone to reassure them, to reassure their family or their children when they rang us about an elderly parent. And we had a presence both from us and from the contractor on site. And I was very interested in what Saskia was saying, because an awful lot of that was really important to us. It's being there and you're halfway through and they changed their mind, or we made it an opt-in, even though we owned the property and we had the right to go in and do this work. Because it was so invasive, we gave people a choice. And because we were doing individual buildings, we had that option rather than a whole apartment block. So we'd be halfway through the process and somebody else would see that their neighbours were getting all this nice stuff and they'd suddenly opt in when they'd opted out previously, or we'd be halfway through and they'd say we had enough. So there was an awful lot of hand-holding, talking to people, explaining the benefits. And even after the works, we found they didn't understand the new heating controls. So we really had to be on the ground. We had to be there. You know, we had to talk to people, we had to meet with people, we had to deal with the elected members, we had to reassure people, all the while getting contractors in and out so we can move them on to the next site, you know, ensuring that we don't delay them because that would increase the cost, and we had a very tight budget to work in. So this communications, this engaging with tenants, this managing their expectations, letting them understand that what was happening on the ground was key to delivering on it. And we also did some of the halting sites, which would be where the travelling community have settled. And even that is even more complicated because the expectations are significantly higher in areas like that the state would provide for them, and that they can, you know, they can have anything that they asked for, whereas we were working within a tight budget. So again, I'd say communications, talking to people, letting them know what's happening, advertising it, you know, briefing the elected members so when they get a phone call, they could answer the queries from the tenants was, or is, and continues to be key to the success of this programme. One thing I would highlight, and that we were surprised when we first started doing this, is that when we started going into these homes, we found other things. So we needed a team behind us. So we may find health problems or disability problems that we needed to bring our social workers in to meet with the family and sort out their other problems that by doing this work, we are now aware of that we weren't aware of previously. We may find different families in the home, our family's composition has changed. And that's key to our rental strategy and everything, and people have permission to reside. So our allocations team had to come in. Sometimes we discovered antisocial behaviour. There was damage internally to the house. There were extensions done that were against the rules and didn't meet the building control. So we needed a whole team of people behind us, because just by us going into this and starting a conversation, we now knew there was a problem and that problem needed to be solved. So I think if somebody's starting in a program like this, they need to realize that they need another team behind them. It's not just the technical work or the engineering work. You're suddenly bringing in everybody else within the housing team. So this is just what a change is like. So the top picture is what the scheme looked like before we went in. These were 1960s constructed bungalows. They were a bit worn. They did need a lot of work. So we went in and we had heat pumps. These didn't require solar panels. They had heat pumps. They had improved insulation in the attic. And as you can see, we did the external wall cladding. So it gave an uplift to the whole area and to the people who live there. And you meet some of the tenants in the video that I'm going to show you soon. So the improvements to the area were huge. And then we brought in a separate funding stream where when we were going in to do this, we could do upgrades, whether it was nice benches for people to sit on in a nearby park or some other added gain to that community or to that street, to the people living there. But we had to ask them what we wanted. You know, when in this one we suggested benches and they said, no, the teenagers will gather there and they'll make us feel uncomfortable. We want planting, we want flowers, we don't want benches. But we didn't know that until we talked to people in these houses and got their feedback and asked them what they wanted. So this is a video, I hope it plays for us, where we meet the tenants. The reason we prepared this video was that many tenants were resistant and they didn't want it. So by preparing this video, it was similar to a demonstration model, but we didn't have that option. So this video was an alternative to the demonstration model that was mentioned earlier.
It could be that you're not sharing the sound.
Okay, and how would I do that?
Let's see.
Or do you have the link there, Elena, if I stop sharing?
I can just share the video since I have the sound, if you don't mind. Yeah.
We're not getting the sound, or I'm not anyway.
You're not getting the sound? Okay, give me a moment. Because in the previous video, you did get the sound, right?
Yes.
Doesn't matter how many webinars we do, there'll always be technical issues.
Share computer sound. Okay, how about now? Can you hear it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll go back to the start.
My name is Orla Hart. I'm the Chief Technician in the Architects Department and the project lead on our retrofit programme within Fingal County Council. It's a 10-year programme and we're hoping to upgrade 25% of our housing stock to a B2 standard. We're carrying out a variety of works to each home in order to bring it up to a B2. Some of these would include triple glazed windows, PV panels, heat pumps, an upgrade of the attic insulation and upgrade of the heating controls. We work in conjunction with our obligated party, which in this instance for this project is REIL, and we also are getting part funding from the Department of Housing and Local Government. Fingal County Council also provide the residual funding that is required in order to achieve the programme.
We were successful bidders on a framework for this particular project. There's 12 number houses in total. We hope to complete them over the course of a 2-month period. And as you can see, we're progressing well with all measures at the moment. We're delighted to be involved in the project and hope that it will be a success and that the tenants will ultimately see the benefits of it in the long run.
Since the first day the panels started working, it went down almost half my electricity. I think everybody should have this done. It would cut down electricity, it would, for the environment. I mean, I'm still kind of astonished when the solar panels are working. I'm saying, oh my God, this is from the sun. It's, you know, it's not, I'm not causing a drain on anybody. It's just an amazing feeling, you know. I think everybody should have. It would help so much.
I never knew what I was missing out like she got it. It's absolutely fabulous. 24 hours hot water, and then when the window comes in, you have a boiler. It's always hot, and you can air your clothes. I may say, what else does a woman want? Every one of the workers, first class. They were lovely and very nice people to have in your house. When I get up in the morning time now, I find the house is more comfortable.
When I came here, I was happy, but it left a lot to be desired if you wanted. But now, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Easy to heat in the winter and easy to keep cool in the summer. It's a better quality of life, definitely.
Gas bill was very high, but now it's not too bad. Thank you so much, because I have warm water all the time.
There's a lovely crew here, you know. Brilliant, but they're kind and they're considerate a lot of people, you know.
After the initial work started, we had some tenants who, after opting out at the beginning, decided that they wanted to have the work done in their house because they saw the benefits of it, and rightly so, because they have a better house, a more cosier home and lower energy bills because of it.
Thanks, Selena. I'll just share the last bit of the presentation.
Yes, go ahead. It's a great video, great to hear the testimonies of the people.
Yeah, I suppose the main reason I show that was because we didn't have a demonstration model that Saskia referred to, and we found many people were hesitant because they weren't interested in the they were afraid of the disruption to their life and what the impact would have. Some people are concerned of having only one source of power, that if there's a problem with electricity, that they don't have an alternative heating system. So there were a lot of concerns. People wanted to keep their open fire and things like that. So the video was prepared to engage people, to bring them along, to make them understand what the impact would be on them and the benefits. So I think my email address was there. So if anybody does have any questions, they can come back to me on it. It is a program where we're in the initial stages of. We're going to expand it and grow. And this has been repeated in 32 counties throughout Ireland. So it's a big body of work in Ireland. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And next we have Quenna from TU Delft, speaking more on the tenant's perspective, on the human scale. Yes, we can see your presentation. We just can't hear you if you're speaking.
Can you also hear me?
Now we can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Good. Let's just try to find my first slide. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Krina Kian. Thank you very much for the invitation for us to join this training day. And I'm an associate professor here at Faculty of Architecture at TU Delft. I'm not here alone. I'm here with my colleague Dr. Zhengxuan Liu and Stephanie Horian, and also Hank Fischer is part, altogether the four of us are part of the Shape EU project, working on social innovation blueprint task. And here today, I would like to introduce a little bit of our results regarding to understanding the behavior of the tenants and how to activate their participation and engagement in the whole renovation processes. And I mainly look at how the decision of individual tenants and collective decision-making are important to explore and understand in the process, and why tenants are such a unique target group, or what is the characteristic of the behavior of the tenants should be picked up in order to make certain nudges or get them activated in taking part of the renovation project. I think the previous speakers, especially Oliver's presentation, has wisely mentioned that the communication is the key. The communication is not only to get them informed, but also throughout the processes. And from the testimonial video that we find out that their communication post-renovation could actually make advocacy for the renovation project. And that can be a kind of sustainable ambassador roles for other neighborhoods nearby to get interested and be aware of renovation as well. So that's basically how behavior perspective could come in the picture, where the nudges and the social part of engagement and are important. And also, I think a few things in the project we find out also are affecting the enthusiasm and the interests of the tenants. One is split incentive. That is one of the barriers that has been often mentioned in academia that is misplaced. Incentives between the landlord, often mentioned, like housing associations, and the tenants. We will also mention a little bit about it. And also the mediation role, who should be the facilitator in the process when communication negotiation are not going smoothly. What are the hassles in the process that the mediation role is important? And then I will briefly talk a little bit about when you see different barriers and the processes needs to be intervened, what kind of possibilities in terms of activating participation, building trust, establishing commitment from the tenant's perspective are important. Therefore, I will also touch a little bit upon about co-ownership, engagement, and co-creation. By doing so, I will mention just a few case projects without telling too much detail of the cases, because previous speakers have mentioned it. I will just pinpoint what kind of social innovation are important using the case as example. Now, we human make decisions, and the decisions basically are what behavior economics tries to entail. So what does it mean when we are asked to make complicated decisions? That needs a lot of information and confidence for us to be able to take part, understand. There are a lot of biases in a general way to say that a decision can be made, but we have our own preferences and cognitive biases, and we need time to understand anything that is new in the system to be able to make kind of confident decisions. In that way, there are Also, another layer of dynamics, that is when individual decisions and collective decisions have to come together in order to make something like a renovation context. For example, we could say that it evolves considering the preferences, opinions, and inputs of multiple stakeholders in the processes when the goals can be made in a choice that everybody is happy. So the key aspect of understanding who are the multiple stakeholders, their interests is very important. Therefore, we find out that from the literatures regarding to the tenants that are relevant from behavioral perspective, we could either use that to explain, or we find certain things affecting their decision making. One is imperfect information. So, for example, the information are incomplete, not trustworthy, not communicated in an understandable way. Bounded rationality could explain that we have to take care of that the tenants couldn't make a rational decision, but how do we communicate certain kind of renovation measures or the plannings to get them early on board, how to get them engaged in the planning phase so that we would understand what is their concerns are. Lack of trust, for example, is another very often mentioned example that tenants tend to have kind of preferences against the scheme from the housing association due to the previous historical reasons. But how to establish trust is another quite important issue to take care of it. Another thing is uncertainty. What about the renovation process? How that would make the tenants change their habits or have to facilitate the relocation processes. So how does it demand the time and efforts from the tenants? So things like this during the beginning phase is quite important to pay attention to that. So to understand this, it's also important to know that tenants are not just one person. It's a group of persons who has various characteristics and behavioral kind of features, and then how we are able to cluster different tenants group is also quite important. Later, I will mention a little bit about the tenants. Who are those vulnerable groups that need special attention? The collective decision-making is important because most of the housing association require certain percentage of the votes in European context. For example, in the Netherlands, there needs 70% of the tenants agreeable to the renovation scheme before the renovation can take place. And often we find from our research that it takes a little bit efforts to get 70% of the votes. And how to make the collective decision-making process smooth. It's quite important also to understand what are the resistance and hesitations, what are the preferences that the different group of tenants would have, and put them on board and see how we can balance the interests. Now, the tenants are quite unique in terms of their rights, but also their vulnerable positions, right? So it's from behavioral perspective, it's important to understand their social demographic kind of characteristics in order to be able to find out how can we, within the specific target group, find out a way to understand what kind of language, how can we edit the message in order to communicate different group of people so that the level of communication would be able to easily comprehend and accept it. What we find in the group, in the ShapeU project, there are certain kind of target groups are vulnerable, especially, for example, when the family has a migration background, language would be a problem. single parent, people who are elderly or with disabilities, mental disease. So those group of people, certain kind of energy ambassadors or energy coach who can talk to them, who they trust, what kind of specific requirement and expectation they would have during the renovation process. Often this group of people are not so verbal, so they don't speak out. So how do we get their wishes out is also a kind of interesting areas to explore in order to safeguard the renovation project to go successful. Now, the target group for the ShapeU project, therefore, we mainly focus on lower and middle income occupants or tenants in the project, but also for some East European countries, it's not just tenants. A lot of the apartments, they are owner occupied, but then they have similar kind of public housing characteristics where instead of housing associations are running the home, the owner associations are taking care of the general maintenance and renovation. So the challenges we find from the project is still to get the tenants and occupants to agree on the plan. And therefore, the behavioral part is how do we socially find a way to facilitate the process from establishing the renovation project until the carrying out and implementation phase of the project. Now, the split incentives is very, very important, but often it is difficult to, for different situations, is quite difficult. For example, what we find out that the split incentives in I will just mention about what it is. The split incentives is mainly about how the landlord and tenants have misplaced incentives in the renovation context. So, for example, the housing associations, they would pay for the renovation, but then the tenants would enjoy the change and improve of quality in the living, but also the saving of the energy bills. Now, in the Netherlands, we have already set a clear target that by the year 2028, there should be phasing out of EFG. So the energy label for the housing associations. So they do have a kind of roadmap and urgency to phase out and do the deep renovation for their existing housing stock. But if without such a kind of urgency, then the housing association or the owners association might need some incentives because, or subsidies because they would have difficulty and struggles to step on the renovation. Now, another thing it's important to solve or deal with split incentives is, for example, EPC, energy performance contract, to have a clear and redistribution of the benefits afterwards, so that we can keep basically energy cost neutral for the tenants, while the landlord or the housing association could get some energy savings after renovation to compensate the renovation project, right? So it's quite important to for split incentive also to reach an agreement with involved parties to have a balanced interests beforehand in order to reduce the mediation or legal aspects, what comes later. The transparency is also quite important to be able to understand, especially during the monitoring phase when the operation expenses, energy bills, for example, is post renovations being able to collect it and redistribute it and so on. Redistributed meaning that how the energy performance contract could be reinforced. Now, another way is the mediation. The mediation is basically an important tool to align different interests in order to promote district renovation. Mediators' roles are someone who is able to facilitate the process, or some agency able to facilitate and build the trust, for example, facilitating community participation. And when this dispute or negotiations not going smoothly, how to resolve it and encouraging collaborations. Well, here I will introduce a little bit about, just now we mentioned about mediation, we mentioned about split incentive. Those are the barriers for this particular target group of tenants that they are facing. And earlier I mentioned about behavioral and cognitive biases where tenants has to, we have to pay attention to this particular group based on their characteristics, their rights, but also how vulnerable groups would have different expectations or unique needs. Here I will start to introduce a little bit about what we find out, the models and the kind of ways, the possibilities to overcome those barriers. The first one is co-ownership. The co-ownership is basically shared ownership, meaning that it would be effective if we get the tenants, the citizens, the occupants on board in order to let them have a shared vision, shared commitment for renovation. We have seen a lot of energy communities, energy cooperative platforms that it's bottom-up approach to get the initiative from the citizens. But we also see that there are also community trust funds that could pull out kind of investment from the interested citizens in order to carry out certain kind of project. And of course, in the context of housing association, social housing, housing association, they always have this maintenance funds and how they use this maintenance funds and be able to do the renovation, energy efficiency renovation. And this is also another form of co-ownership. As previous speakers also mentioned, it's quite an essential way to get the engagement, the co-creation processes from the tenants. Why? Because activating tenants to be taking part of it would safeguard the process and reduce any hassles happening in the process. And therefore, how to get them engaged? It's, as mentioned from Austria, providing information, getting feedbacks, encouraging participation, is giving them a sense of ownership and commitment is a way, effective way for engaging them, but also getting them on board for decision-making implementation process and make use of their wisdom and try to find out a way to co-create the renovation plan. One project I was involved is, for example, the tenants would be easy to get agreeable if anything to do with aesthetic. So if you are able to make their living environment pretty or give them options of different colors of the kitchen or the interior design part to them, and then for them, they are open to communicate about energy-related renovation. So small nudging things based on our understanding what are the preferences of specific target group of an apartment or housing, social housing dwellings. So that's quite important to find out. I will quickly go through, due to the time limit, a few projects. This is one project in Dublin, Ireland. What I find is very interesting because in this project, they take care of the vulnerable group and did the training for the whole team on insulation works. So everyone who live there knows about how the project is being carried out, all the technical aspects. And then they also did post-occupancy and monitoring in order to make sure that the behavior of the occupants are well informed how to work out, so it's not just the implementation, but also the post-occupancy. Another project in Austria, Fehring, it's an interesting project because what they did is they make use of the local community to engage different workshops and online platforms, study tours. So there is already solidarities and understandings among the participants in order to build up a kind of sustainable village. And this is a bottom-up approach with a strong local engagement. If I go further, also from Hungary, this case in Kapspa, it's activities to engage the residents in order to take care of the social cohesion and create opportunities for people to get through the activities organized from the community to enhance the neighborhood and community for physical renewal of the residential environment. In the Netherlands, we have Energy Sprong. I think some of you may be aware of it. It's Energy Leap. It's a program where in the Netherlands, they make use of the social housing dwellings to do deep renovation, but in an affordable way. So the residents are always involved in the decision-making and planning phases and have a shared ownership in terms of the maintenance and the energy efficient systems during and post renovation. So this is a successful case. About the mediation. Mediation is basically how do you facilitate the process when the process is not smoothly. A case from Denmark is called Arberg. So it is a kind of cooperative model focusing on how the socially disadvantaged living areas can be upgraded with a long-term vision and strategies to ensure a kind of quality of life. So energy efficiency renovation is one vision, but the quality of life is playing in a role to get people more involved and interested in the renovation processes. The last example that I'm using here is Halle, Belgium. So this case, what I think is quite unique and interesting is it focuses on the effective communication with the residents throughout the process, and then the transparency of the work report during the process and how they get the contractor and subcontractors all at very early stage in a collaborative way. So the project manager plays a very important role to pull everyone together to share the thoughts and do the co-creation processes. So thank you very much. That's the presentation I have for you today. If you have any questions, do feel free.
Yes, thank you so much. I think you summarized very well. I think it was nice to have this presentation at the end, everything that we heard previously. If you have any questions, this is the time to ask them to any of the speakers. So go ahead, either raise your hand or use the chat. And if no questions, we will move on to the breakout rooms. But let's see. Okay, I think we can go to the breakout rooms and discuss in smaller groups. Maybe people will feel more comfortable to talk there. Just a question, a technical question from my side. I did create 3 breakout rooms. Can you all see them? We have 3 breakout rooms depending on the scale you are interested in. So we have the district scale, building scale, and tenant scale. So if you were interested more in what Daniel was talking about, then go ahead and join the first one, district scale. If you were interested more in what's happening in Fingal County, go to the building scale. And lastly, tenant scale, the presentation that Quena just gave us. I will go ahead and open all the rooms now. And it's up to you to choose which room is most interesting for you.